All right. We are live and good morning, everyone. I am glad that we are here right now. Let me make sure you can hear me okay. Think you can hear me okay. Looks like we are live. So, yep. All right, let's get it. So, this morning we are diving into a topic really around habits and how you start your
Recording in progress.
how you can really start new habits, how you can frame out habits so that you can live the life that you want to live, and everything comes down to habits. But before we do that, every week when I meet with the community, we always dive into our four essentials. Really, it's five essentials just to start our week off. So the first thing, and let me share my screen so you can see me here. The first thing we dive into, let me share wrong screen. Let me share this screen so you can see me, so you can see my screen. So we always start with a core to living an extraordinary life is we have to evaluate how last week went. And so when you're thinking about this week, this is Sunday, we're heading into a new week. What I want you to think about is this last week, the last 7 days, what went well, what didn't go well, what was working, what wasn't working. So you really want to start and you want to evaluate your previous week. After you evaluate, then we want to set our intentions. So what are your intentions for this coming week? And intentions are kind of abstract experiences that you want to step into. So you might say, man, my intentions are to work out more this week, spend more time with my family this week. It's not really measurable. You might say my intentions are to, really have joy and hope and excitement and patience this week, right? So you really want to establish what are your intentions that you want to lean into this week. After you set your intentions, now we need a goal. And your goal is something that is specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time bound, right? So what is your goal? What do you want to step into, lean into? And you want it to be specific. So you might say, I want to work out 3 times this week, right? I want to go on a daddy-daughter date with my kids. I want to connect with my wife and have a date with my wife or my partner or my husband, right? So you really want to set very specific goals. So the first thing you do is you want to evaluate last week. That's step number one. Then you want to set your intentions. So this is one, this is two. You want to set your intentions for this coming week. Step number three is you want to establish your goals for the week. And then we want to do this roadmap. This is what we call the roadmap or your plan. So whatever your goals are, how are you actually going to accomplish those goals? What are you going to do to accomplish those goals, right? What's the plan? So if I know my intentions are to spend more time with my kids, my goal is to have family dinners, let's say 4 times this week, and to have a daddy-daughter date with, 2 of my daughters. Then I need a plan. Well, I'm going to come home by 5 o'clock. We're going to have dinner at 6 o'clock, right? I'm going to on Tuesday. I'm going to take them to a trampoline house, right? We're going to go. So you really want to be very specific. You want to be very specific with what your plan is. A lot of times we have goals, but we don't have plans. We set goals. Good morning. We set goals for ourselves, but we don't have plans. So exactly what is your plan going to be in order to accomplish your goal? And then the last thing we want to do is the next and last thing, most important thing, is we need to execute, right? And we go over this every week. We really want to execute, and executing is really dependent upon you having the support, and the accountability, right? So support and accountability. Ask yourself this question. In order to execute on my plan, what support do I need? What accountability do I need? That might come in the form of coaching. That might come in the form of community, friendships, right? That might come in the form of really coaching and community is like the support that you need in order to execute on your goal. So you might have a fitness goal. You might have a diet goal, eating goal. You might have a savings goal, a budgeting goal, relationship, going on a date this week, like professional goal, finishing a project, writing a paper, finishing your degree, goals that you want to accomplish. And this is all for, and let me just make sure you understand, Simone, we go over this every week. Hey, SJ, we go over this every week. This is around this week. What do I need to do in order to ensure that I can really live at my highest self and accomplish the things I need to accomplish this coming week, right? So we first want to evaluate, how did last week go? What did we learn from last week? What do we not learn from last week, right? What are the things that we need to do a little bit differently that we didn't do well last week? Then we want to set our intentions for this week. Then we want to establish goals, establish roadmaps, and then we want to execute, right? This is something I want to encourage you to do, as I do every single week. I want to encourage you to do this today. This is Sunday morning, maybe late morning for some of you all if you're on the East Coast. So this is something I want you to take 10 minutes. It shouldn't take longer than 10, maybe 15 minutes to walk through this and to really lay this out so that you can have a very clear roadmap and a very clear plan for this next week, right? So this is something we go over. Some of you are online. Simone is in the chat. SJ is in the chat. I know others are joining. Good morning. How are you doing? Doing well. SJ, you're good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. All right. So make sure you're taking some time. Simone, you're good? Yes. Okay. Wonderful. So make sure you're taking some time to kind of think through what this would look like for you this week. All right. So I want to dive into today specifically something, the last couple of weeks we've been talking about, this is obviously we're in Q3. This is a new quarter, the beginning of July. I want to think about, and I know, Simone, you sent me your goals. Thank you for doing that. I want us to think about what are the habits that we need to really lean into and the habits we need to begin in order to have a phenomenal quarter, right? So when you think about your habits, I want you to first do an inventory of your habits. Let's take a minute and write down all of the things that you do on a consistent basis that you would classify as a habit. Right? Now, you might say, well, I have the habit of like waking up and, taking a shower, brushing my teeth, grooming myself. Okay, we're not gonna include that. Like there's some things that are necessary for us to do in life. But I want you to think about other habits that you lean into that are actually maybe helping you move closer towards your goals, or that may not be helping you move closer to your goals. So what are some of the habits like that you can think of? And you can put it in the chat, right? You can put it in the chat, or you can unmute and just kind of talk with me about it. What are some of the habits that you engage in every single, on a daily basis or on a weekly basis? Would love to know. You can put them in the chat or you can unmute. Right? So you might say, man, I have the habit, I drink, half a gallon of water a day. I exercise 3 to 5 times a day. You might say, I have the habit of I've developed the ability to I'm going to sleep 7 to 8 hours, right? There's a habit, right? Some of you all have exercise habits where you take a walk every single day, and it's not something that happens coincidentally. It's not something that happens by accidents or every now and again, but it's actually something that you do every single day. You're taking a walk every single day, right? Preparing healthy meals, right, for yourself at home. You might say, man, I have the habit of, just meal prepping every week. I get together, my family or maybe myself, and I meal prep, right? Some of you all may have the habit of journaling, right? Anyone have the habit of journaling, right? So you journal, you do a to-do list. Maybe you have the habit of, maybe in a healthy, unhealthy way, right? You have the habit of, watching TV before you fall asleep, right? And so you're either watching TV or maybe you're on your phone, and then you put your phone down and you go to sleep. Some of you may have the habit of not doing that. So you might say, man, before I go to bed every night, I just read a couple chapters from a book that I've been reading, right? I want you to really think about, like, what are all of the habits that you engage in on a weekly basis? And I just want you to write a long list of them. So first thing we're going to do is we are going to inventory our habits. Inventory. I want you to inventory your habits. Write a long list. And the reason why we're doing this is because what I realized for my own self, and you may realize this as well, is that there are some things that we do that we don't even realize we do. And we would not feel comfortable like elevating it to the level of habit, right? And so if I know the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I start scrolling, like, I need to write that down as I have a habit. And all science, all research shows that going to your phone first thing in the morning is not a healthy habit, right? But if you don't elevate it to the level of habit and put it in its right category, you might be just engaging in it without realizing the impact it's having on you. So I really want you to take a moment and inventory every single thing that you do on a consistent basis. And it might be as simple as, man, the first thing I do when I wake up every morning is I go to the bathroom, then I brush my teeth, then I take a shower. Like, it's routine, but it's a habit that you're engaged in, right? It's something that you're doing, right? After you inventory every single habit that you have, right? The second step I want you to engage in is I want you to evaluate the habit in light of your identity. What does this mean? What does this mean? This means I want you to think about that habit, and I want you to ask yourself, what does this habit actually mean, or how is this habit reinforcing an identity that I am embracing or I am living into? So think about the habit, and then I want you to evaluate it in light of your identity. And the reason being is because this is your identity. These are your behaviors or your habits. Habits are nothing more than behaviors. And what I've learned and what I want to really drive home for you is that your identity drives your habits, and your habits or behaviors reinforce your identity. And so you cannot be engaging in a habit without that habit on some level being an indicator of an identity that you have consciously or unconsciously embraced. So if you have the habit, let's say, of, we'll use a sports person, for example, a Kobe Bryant or LeBron James or a Steph Curry or Michael Jordan, like, if they have the habit of showing up early, staying late, working out harder, right? If that's a habit or a behavior that they're engaged in, it's because that habit is being informed by an identity that they have embraced, an identity that they have determined that who they are is, I am someone who works harder than everyone else. And so because I work harder than everyone else, I have the habit of staying late. I engage in the behavior of showing up early, right? I put in more work, and the more I show up early and stay late, that also reinforces this identity that I have, which is I am a hard worker. And so when you really think about all of the habits, what do those habits actually say about who you are? So let's just take the unhealthy habit, right? And I'm going to call it unhealthy, no judgment. The unhealthy habit of, let's say, eating really late or engaging in social media right before you go to bed, like using screen time right before you go to bed. Like, what does that habit say about who you are, right? And it's not an indictment in any way, but we just want to take time to make sure that we're living with our eyes wide open and that we're not engaging in self-defeating, subconscious self-defeating behavior, right? So let's create a long list of all of our habits and then let's evaluate those habits, right? So if I have the habit of, man, getting up and getting groomed, getting cleaned, what does that habit say about me? Well, I'm someone who takes pride in who I am. I want to make sure that I feel good, I smell good, I present well. That's a beautiful thing, right? If I have the habit of eating a high protein breakfast, right? What does that say about me? I'm someone who I value my my health, and I want to fuel my body with energy that will help sustain me throughout the day, right? That's a good thing, right? If you have the habit of going on a walk after dinner with your family, right? What does that habit say about you? Well, that habit says I value my family time and I value my health and I want to exercise and, not just let the food sit in my stomach, right? That's a good thing, right? So we can think about these good habits that we engage in, and we want to connect those good habits to an identity that we have either consciously or subconsciously embraced. At the same time, we also want to think about the not so good habits that we have, that we are engaged in, and also really just kind of evaluate them in light of our identity. So man, if I have the tendency of eating junk food right before I go to bed, or I stay up late watching TV and then I get up late, like what do those things say about who I am? And I just want to be aware of that. I want to be aware of that. It's not a judgment. It's not a I'm better than or worse than anyone else. It's just like, man, this is an identity that I have taken on. Like, is this making sense? Let me just stop, pause, questions. Make sense?
Yep, it makes sense.
Right. So I think that the value of this is that an unhealthy habit can, and the reason why we're doing this, an unhealthy habit can reveal, let me say it like this, it can reveal unresolved identity gaps. Identity gaps. An identity gap is an unmet need. Maybe it's a limiting belief. And so if there's a gap in your identity, there's a story that you are telling yourself that is not serving you. And so you're engaged in behavior that's reinforcing this story that on some level is creating maybe a dissonance between who you want to be and who you think you are, or who you want to be and who you actually are. And so there's this gap. That's what an identity gap is. So it's almost like, this is my ideal self, and then this is my real self. Let me draw it like this, right? This is my ideal self. This is my real self. And this gap, this is an identity gap. And so I might be engaging in behavior down here and habits down here that are trying to fill a deeper emotional need, but in reality, they're keeping me from living into my ideal self. And so what we're doing is step one, we're identifying all of our habits. Step two, we are asking ourselves the question, what are the implications of this habit on who I am as a person? What do they say about me? What does this behavior say about me? Am I living up to my ideal self, or am I living down below to my real self? And this habit is an indication of whether I'm living my ideal self or my real self. If I have the habit of saving money, right? I save 10% of my income, right? Then I have embraced this identity of my ideal self. Man, I'm a saver. If I have the habit of spending more than I actually bring in, then that behavior, that is an indication that there may be some unmet emotional need, which is then calling me to engage in behavior that is below my ideal self. And so what I want to then do is step number 3, I want to ask myself the question, what habits must I engage in to drive me forward? We're just going to summarize it like that, right? A lot of writing. So I then want to ask myself the question, what are the habits up here, right? Habit 1, habit 2, habit 3. Like when I think about who I want to be, this person, when I think about who I want to be, what are the habits that I need to engage in that will actually be a healthy reflection of who I want to be? And so you've created a long list of all of your habits, good, bad, and ugly, right? You have a long list of all your habits, right? What I want you to do with that long list is I want you to then, as you're categorizing it, like, is this an ideal self habit, or is this like a less than ideal self habit? Is this my highest self habit, or is this my lowest self habit? And then I want you to just kind of evaluate and kind of bucket them and ask yourself this question: what are the habits that I have to engage in that would actually move me, that would close this gap and will allow me to operate in my highest self? We know some of those habits are going to be, habits that surrounding your faith, right? Your spirituality, your walk with God. Habits that are surrounding your financial well-being, your financial health. Habits that are surrounding your family, how to have a healthy family, things that you're doing as a family. Habits that are surrounding your future self is what we call it. Your future self is like your career advancement, your academic advancement. What are those habits that you need to engage in, right? Habits that are surrounding your fitness, right? What are the fitness habits that you need to lean into that would actually move you closer towards your ideal self? And I want you to write a list of those habits. Okay, Seth. All right, Simone. All right, Monica. All right, listen. If I'm going to engage in the highest version of myself, what are the habits that person needs to engage in? What are those habits? Am I currently engaging in those habits? And if I'm not engaging in those habits, why am I not engaging in those habits? Let me name the gap. What identity am I holding on to that is not serving my highest self? And then I want you to then begin to lean into and reinforce that positive identity, that positive ideal self. And you do that by your words. So you might begin to tell yourself, rather than saying, man, I'm not someone who exercises. Okay. I was talking to someone and they're on a fitness journey. And I said, well, what's your fitness goal? And they said, well, I just want to get a little bit toned. I just want to tone up a little bit. I was like, okay, that's a great fitness goal. I was like, how are you doing that? I said, how well are you doing at that? And they're like, well, kind of hit and miss. I'm not really, not really reaching it as much as I want to. Sometimes I go to the gym, sometimes I don't. And I said, I think the behavior that you're experiencing is because of the gap in your identity and the goal. And so when you tell yourself, okay, I'm currently out of weight, I'm currently out of shape, and I just want to get a little bit toned, that is a desired state, but that desired state isn't transforming how you see yourself. In order to truly engage in the behaviors that will lead to changes in your physical structure, your physical body shape, you have to really shift your identity. So rather than setting a goal that says, I just want to get a little bit toned, why don't you say to yourself, I am someone who works out regularly. I am someone who takes my health seriously. I am someone who is a fitness influencer. Maybe not like an Instagram fitness influencer, but like my body, my life, my health, it influences other people to live healthier lives, and begin to shape your identity. There's a study that showed that if you want to stop smoking, and I may have shared this with you all before, if you want to stop smoking, they said one of the first things you do is you have to tell yourself, I'm not someone who smokes. I don't smoke. And they said, even if you have a cigarette in your hand and you are actively smoking, if you tell yourself, I am not someone who smokes, what is happening in your brain is there is clearly dissonance, right? There's a gap. You're telling yourself you don't smoke, but you're engaging in behavior that does smoke. What will happen is you will eventually either change your language, or you will change your behavior. Because your body does not want, and your life does not want to live in this constant dissonance between who you are and who you say you are. And so if you say, man, I'm not someone who smokes. I'm not someone who smokes. I'm not someone who smokes. Even though you are actively smoking, what they suggest is that eventually you will stop smoking, because your brain is beginning to rewire, and you're beginning to understand that, well, actually, I'm not someone who smokes, so what I'm engaging in right now doesn't line up with who I am, so let me stop doing the thing that I'm engaging in. The problem that you and I experience in our life is too often we allow our words to actually determine, or to actually be a reflection of the behavior that we experience. So I might say to myself, I'm not someone who smokes. I'm not a smoker. But the moment I pick up that cigarette and I start smoking, I was like, oh, Seth, you knew it. You are a smoker. I just can't stop smoking. And the moment you tell yourself, I can't stop smoking, then that is reinforcing an identity that says, I am a smoker. And so what we do in our lives is we often, for better or for worse, we allow our habits and our behaviors to drive our identity. And what I want to encourage you today, as you think about heading into this week, heading into this quarter, is I want you to say to yourself, okay, what is my ideal self? What does it look like for me to operate at my highest self? And then what habits do I need to embrace that will align with my highest self? Yes, Susan, I am ambitious. I am not defeated. Like, you begin to speak those words over you. And as you are speaking those words over you, they begin to drive and influence your habits, your behaviors. Your habits and behaviors begin to reinforce. They begin to reinforce your identity. So we've gone through some steps here, right? Step 1, inventory. Create an inventory of all of your habits. Inventory all your habits. Inventory all your habits. Step 2, evaluate that habit in light of your identity. What does this say about me? What does this habit mean? Who am I? What's happening here? Step 3, what habits do I need to engage in order to really operate at my highest self? No. What habits do I need to engage in? Step 4, what habits do I need to stop? Now, I know this sounds easier said than done. Oh, Seth, if you understood, I just have this habit of eating ice cream before I go to bed. I just can't stop. Listen, I'm with you. I have that habit too. we here together. But I think the first thing is just like naming it. Like, let's just call it out. Let's just call it out for what it is. Let's just call it out. Small habits. What are the habits that I need to identify and reclassify? And then this week, I don't want you to try to climb Mount Everest and like do it all. This week, I want you just to think about what is one small habit that I can begin to lean into. And what identity statement do I need to write down, say to myself, that will help me drive the habit forward? So this week, man, a habit. Let me just be real with y'all. A habit that I want to engage in. I haven't done it in a couple weeks. I kind of fell off. And that's going on a 45-minute walk every day in the evening. Sometimes I go with my daughter. Sometimes I go by myself. And it's something that I really enjoyed. Got busy, stopped doing it as much. And so for this week, it's like, man, I want to get back into that, right? So what identity statement do I need to say to myself that will move me into that again, that will drive that habit forward, right? And that identity statement is, man, I am someone who goes on a walk every single night, right? I end the night, rather than ending the night in front of the television or watching a movie, it's like I end the night on a walk, right? And I am a walker, right? I'm an exerciser. I'm a healthy person. And these are identity statements that I want to embrace that will drive me forward into this habit. And that will hopefully close the gap, right? This identity gap. It's the space between your current self-concept and your ideal self. And it's often rooted in like an internal conflict. It's often rooted in self-sabotage. And so I need to say, no, like this is who I am. I am not a smoker. I am a walker, right? I am someone who does this. And maybe not even framing it in the negative, right? If to say like, I am not I would just say, let's frame it in the positive, right? Man, I'm someone who exercises. I'm someone who eats healthy. I'm someone who saves money, right? I am an investor, right? I am someone who I am patient with my family, right? I am someone who is present, right? I want the habit of not rushing. I want to be present with people who I'm engaged with and really connected to people. I am someone who is present. And so I want to just begin to articulate that and allow that to influence and shape my identity. And it doesn't happen overnight, but like nature around us over time, if you plant seeds and water those seeds will grow. And over time, you will reap a harvest from the words, the statements, the affirmations, and the little identity shifts that you were making every single day. And so I really want you to think about, okay, as I'm going into this new week, specifically on a micro level, but then even on a macro level, as I'm approaching this new quarter, right? Q3, we have 3 months ahead of us, right? This is week 1. Well, last week was kind of half of week 1. So we got 3 months ahead of us. through the end of September. And the goal is, man, what do I want to have started and or stopped by the end of September? And what habits do I want to have started? What habits do I want to have stopped by the end of September? And if you're struggling with this idea and you're struggling with this concept, you feel slightly overwhelmed because it might feel like it's bigger than you, that you don't have the ability to sustain it through the end of the quarter. Maybe you've tried starting new habits and then you failed. You've realized that this identity gap was too big. This identity gap between your ideal self and your self-concept was too big, and it was too much for you to close that gap. I want you to understand just the power of 3. Let's just do 3 days. Choose a habit, a new habit, or a habit that you want to stop doing, and a habit that you want to start doing, and just for 3 days, lean into that habit. And let's try it. Let's see how you feel at the end of those 3 days. So you may say, man, the habit I want to stop doing is like scrolling before I go to bed. And I want to start a habit of reading a book, for 30 minutes before I go to bed. Okay, let's just do it for 3 days. Let's not even think 3 months. Let's think 3 days. Let's engage in it for 3 days. At the end of the 3 days, let's then evaluate, right? Let's evaluate. How do I feel? Right? How do I feel at the end of those 3 days? Did it work? Did it not work? Do I feel better? Did I sleep better? You have to give yourself a little bit of runway. So it just can't be 1 day, but give yourself 3 days. And at the end of those 3 days, evaluate and then determine, is this something I want to continue doing? And do I want to continue doing it for another 3 days? And just take it in chunks. Take it in chunks of 3. Now, at some point, if you do it for 3 days and then maybe another 3, at some point, I then want you to make the decision, I want to do this for the month. I've demonstrated that I can do it for 3 days. Maybe I've demonstrated I can do it for 6 days. I want to do this for the remainder of the month. And just make that commitment to yourself. Ask yourself as you're making that commitment, what support and accountability do I need in order to keep this commitment and in order to execute on this commitment? Do I need to tell a friend, tell my spouse, tell my partner, maybe engage my kids? We all do it together, or they hold me accountable. Maybe I tell my coach, my community about this new goal that I have, this new habit that I want to form. And let's just lean into it, y'all. So for today, we've kind of covered a lot. I'm really wanting you to think about, okay, what are the habits that you want to form as we move into this new quarter? And what are the habits that you want to stop as we move into this new quarter? I want you, step number 1, right here, I want you to inventory all of your habits, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? What are the good things that you're doing? What are the not so good things that you're doing? Create a long list of all of your habits. Step number 2 is evaluate those habits in light of your identity. So what do these habits mean what do they say about me? Why do I engage in these habits? Is there a gap, right? Is this a healthy habit? Is this an unhealthy habit? So let's categorize them. And then step number 3, asking yourself, what habits must I engage in to drive me forward towards my ideal self, towards my healthy self, so I can have stronger faith, stronger finances, stronger family, stronger fitness, right? A stronger future. What habits do I need to engage in? What habits do I need to stop? And let me set up a 3-day trial run of those habits. So this is where we are. This is what we've covered. And the principle behind this is simply that your identity drives your habits, drives your behavior, and your behaviors reinforce your identity. So in order to truly change your habits and behavior, you really have to start with a lot of clarity around who you are as an individual, this identity that you want to embrace. Who is it, right? I am a blank. I am a blank, right? So fill in the blank. I am a runner. I am a healthy person. I am a saver. What is that identity that you need, in that identity statement that you need to declare that will drive your habits forward? And then those habits will be reinforced, right? So questions, thoughts, comments, make sense? Feel free to unmute, drop it in the chat, right? What are your questions, comments, thoughts?
I think it makes sense. I think the part that resonated most with me was and I realized that I did this, but I didn't realize that I needed to, I guess I didn't realize that I needed to make the adjustment. Like when I go running, I think one of the goals I told you, I wanted to drop my mile time by like 30 seconds. And I find that when I'm running, I'm talking to myself, like literally I'm like, well, are you really a runner? Are you running? You know, you're running now, so yes, you are a runner. And when I'm done, I'm like, I really feel like I could have gone harder, but I just didn't because of just all the conversation that's going on in my head. So making sure that I adjusted to say something like, I am a consistent mile runner, I think will be helpful.
Yeah.
And I have the other 3 impulse things I want to just keep saying to myself. But yeah, so that resonated with me, the fact that I speak negatively and don't even realize it. And accomplish these goals. So it makes sense.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. That is, it's almost like the story you're telling yourself, right? The story you're telling yourself while you're doing it. It's impacting on a subconscious level your ability to really do it the way that you want to do it. Right. So excellent. All right. Anyone else? Questions, thoughts, comments, anything? Let me check the chat. Makes sense. Kyle says it makes sense. Right. So this is, man, I mean, you're a part of this community because it's really about like, man, how do I really make sure I'm being intentional about my life? How do I make sure I'm showing up with a lot of purpose and clarity and focus? Right. And really all of it boils down to the habits that we engage in. Right. And are those habits serving us, or are all those habits hindering and hurting us? Right. So this week, take some time, reflect on it. This would be an excellent exercise to do. If you don't have time to do it right now, this would be an excellent exercise to do tonight. Rather than scrolling or watching something before you go to bed, right? Take out a notebook and just go through this exercise. What are all my habits? Like, let me just go through. Like, let me think about the last couple days. What are the things I do pretty much every single day that can be classified as a habit? Let me write them down. Let me begin to evaluate them. Let me identify what are the ones that are healthy, what are the ones that are unhealthy, what are the ones I need to release, let go of, and see kind of how you feel, replacing the unhealthy ones with healthy ones and trying them on for 3 days. All right. So once you do this, please send me a text, message me, let me know, hey, I did it, it's done. Would love any feedback that you might have or any aha moments that you might have about this. And I want you to have a phenomenal week, right? So we step into purpose and extraordinary living. We step into clarity, not by accident, not by happenstance, but by intention and by default. And so I want to encourage you to step into this week with intention, with deliberate focus and deliberate energy, and reach out if there's anything I can do to support you in that journey. All right? Wonderful. Have a beautiful rest of your day. And we'll see you later this week. All right. Bye, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.